Hello everyone, welcome to my third British Championships final video. So of my third game of 9, it was actually played on the 23rd of December, but I'm a bit late in uploading it. It was an incredibly interesting match. I'm not going to try and make the video too long, hopefully it will be 10 minutes or less. Anyway, I'm playing Tom O'Gordon, who is an FM from Ireland, a very, very strong player, who I believe will be an IM fairly soon. He's definitely got the makings of it, and I believe he's only 18, so he's still got a lot of time to get the greater titles. So in this game, I was white. I played d4, and I had prepped for him because against e4 he plays Sicilians, but against d4 and c4 and anything else, he plays the King's Indian defense. Very solid opening. And I had prepared this rather unusual move, knight bd2. If he played d5, I had something else prepared, but he played into the King's Indian, bishop g7. And then I play e4, so we're going into a perk, not really a full King's Indian. So the ideas and themes are a bit different in these openings, and I expect a bit more experience with it. So here we go. He castles, I castle. And then he realizes he needs to play e5, so he plays knight c6, attempting to play the move pawn e5 like in the King's Indian. But I try and restrain him with knight c4, and then he makes a big mistake and falls into my trap. Tom O'Gordon plays knight takes e4 because he has seen this type of thing hundreds of times, I expect. It's called the fork trick. If I take their knight with the bishop, their pawn in front of their queen will move one step forwards, and it will attack my knight on c4, and also my bishop will have taken his knight, so it will also attack his bishop. And this is often a way for black to win back the piece, also trade a pawn off the board, and essentially be equal. But in this position they would actually be better if I did this. But he fell into my trap where I played d5. Both his knights are attacked. He can't save both. So he has lost a knight for 2 pawns, but they are 2 central pawns. The 2 pawns I don't have that he has are d and e pawns. And if he can put his pawns in the centre, then a player like Mikhail Tal would have said that he may prefer the pawns over the knight. So still not an easy game at all. And he starts shoving his pawns up the board. I think I make a big mistake here. I'm going with the theme of keeping my 2 bishops, hoping that they will later prove themselves to be strong. But here I think it matters a lot more to develop my pieces quickly than saving my bishop pair, because the centre's going to be closed anyway. The bishops may not be good for another 20 moves. So this allows him to get a bit of time with f5. I go for his c-pawn, hoping to win a pawn and then increase the material edge I have. He defends. I throw in a check, and I was hoping that if he blocked with his pawn, I would now be able to just get a clearly winning position after bishop takes. Pawn takes, queen takes, and I'm attacking his rook, knight, and the king. So one of those will drop next turn, and I'll win back the material I just sacrificed, and I'll be clearly winning. But he didn't play pawn d5. He played king h8, which is the correct move. He doesn't want to trade lots of pieces. He wants to keep as many things on the board as he can, hoping to complicate. And then here I do go for what is technically the best move, but it's incredibly difficult to work out, and I go wrong. This was probably not correct in the grand scheme of things. I should have tried to keep it simple, but I wanted to gain back more space, and I don't like being squashed like this. He played the excellent move f4, and I kept my bishop pair with bishop c1. If his queen takes my knight, then my bishop goes to d5, and it will attack his queen and the rook on the same diagonal. So he plays knight f2, thinking that he has a resource, and I missed the best move. Can you find the only move for white which keeps my advantage? So the move I did not find is queen d5, not even taking his knight. I was worried about bishop to b7, and then I thought my knight would be pinned for a long time. But it turns out that this is perfectly okay, and I can play queen c4. And even though I haven't really won his c-pawn because he won my f-pawn, his pawns are restrained from coming anywhere further down the board. And because of that, I can then reorganize my pieces and probably win the game. But I did not find this continuation. I instead played king takes f2. Very, very poor move. Because now I play a bishop d5 and queen d5 will lead to the same move. He has the queen b6 check. And then my king is going to be weak for a very long time. If he can play e4, make my knight move, then play f3, suddenly I might get checkmated. And he developed his bishop, saving his rook. I develop my bishop. I don't care so much about pawns anymore. I'm going to give him the b2 pawn, and if he takes it, I can quickly develop my rooks as well, and all my pieces will be fighting. So I think my extra piece should give me the edge, and it does according to the computer. He plays a5, preventing me from doing what I wanted, and doing what I wanted him to do. So then bishop c3, improving the bishop, which is one of the best moves. Bishop c6, and then here, it turned out on chess.com after the game, it gives an analysis of the position, and it said I should play queen d3, which to me looked ridiculous. And then this computer says that queen d3, queen d2, and the move I played are all about the same. So my move is okay. He attacked my queen, and I dropped back, thinking that maybe I could start attacking his king and get some sort of checkmate on the king side, while my king is very weak as well. He improves the rook. Excellent move. He's trying to move sideways to attack my queen. Queen h4. This was a poor move, I think. I had two plans. One was knight g5, which I later played, going for checkmate. But also I had thought maybe I could play queen f2, trading the queens, which will completely stop his attack, and that will take away a lot of his compensation that he has for the piece. And also I thought that maybe if he played d5, going for my bishop, I could take on e5, and there's so many open lines and checkmating plans that it looks very, very dangerous. But he played the correct move, e4, and this destroys queen f2, because he'll play e3, or even just move his queen, and then I can't trade queen. And if he does much else, if I do much else rather, he has moves that stop me. So I played knight g5 going for mate. He stopped me with h5. I traded, thinking that maybe with the trader pieces I would be better, or it would be easier to prove my advantage. But here I realised that his attack hasn't really been stopped. He's planning f3, e3 could be a move. He could even play things like bishop b5, which would trade another piece, but it would remove a lot of defenders around my king. He can also take on b2 later. There's just so many moves which improve black's position, and not many that improve mine. It's possible my best move is rook to d1, improving the worst piece. In hindsight, I maybe should have played this and tried to survive his initiative. Instead, I took the pawn, thinking that maybe I could give back my knight for 2 or 3 pawns and have a position that was more or less equal. That's not the case. He's greedy now. He takes the pawn. I improve the rook. And to my surprise, he did not take on c2, which is not the best move. He played queen c3, which actually isn't quite as good as queen c2, I don't think, but it does pose a lot more problems here. So I played bishop e2, saving the bishop, and I think queen f6 is strongest, but he played rook f8, lining up with my knight, and also threatening to take it with a fork on my queen and king. g3, and my plan was, if he pushes g5, what do I do? At minimum, I get a draw. Check, then check again, and if I choose to, I can simply go to h6, and then back to g6 with check forever. And if he trades queens with queen g7, or tries to trade queens, I'm not sure this is that bad for me. I might be able to go queen e6, but I definitely think I've gotten out of this with not the worst position in the world. I also have bishop d5, c4, which is potentially a bit worrying for him, and he may have to play either king h8, leading to a draw, or if he plays d5, I do have the option of either trading queens or even taking the bishop, leaving two of my pieces hanging, but he can't take both at once. It's a very interesting position that could have occurred, but one that he would not like. So instead, he played bishop e8, another fantastic move, improving his bishop, defending h5 when he moves the g5 pawn. I was low on ideas, so I tried queen e7, pressuring his rook and bishop, and kind of still being a little bit threatening towards his king. g5 is now played, and I don't see what else to do, so I try rook d5, attempting again to trade lots of pieces and remove his initiative. If rook takes, I may even win. Queen takes f8, king moves, and I think I can grab this rook for free. So I don't think black has enough now. Instead, though, he played pawn takes knight, and I then realized after I took the rook, I cannot take the bishop without losing the game. What would you play as black after queen takes e8? Pawn takes pawn on g3 check. And then if I move my king to g1, the queen will capture my rook with a check. And if king g2, attempting to draw with him taking my rook and then me finding perpetual checks, he would go rook f2, and I cannot avoid mate. If king to the first rank on g1 or h1, he'll take my rook, leading to a mate. And with king h3, he has rook takes h2, checkmate. So I would lose very convincingly. So instead, I tried g4, closing the f-file for the time being, going for the rook, still aiming at the bishop. He stopped all of those with queen e5. I kept the queens on now because I need to try and get counterplay. He's now got an extra pawn. Rook g5, attempting to open the g-file now, but I do end up stopping him with h4 and then g5. But he does have two connected passed pawns on e and f. Still not easy at all for me to summon up an attack. So queen d8, I'm pressuring both pawns on a and d, and his bishop. So he has to be a little careful. Bishop g6, and here my last roll of the dice was to play rook b1, his excellent move f3. If I do save the bishop, then his queen comes in to say g3 and I get mated. So I played rook b8, going for a checkmate. He took my bishop, I took back. Still completely lost for me, but I am threatening queen into the corner with a checkmate. But he stopped me, giving his king the escape square g6, and threatening bishop c4 check. I couldn't see a way to improve, so I prevented bishop c4. Rook g8, trading rooks, excellent move from him. Queen d7, and when he took the rook, I decided that now my only chance was to go for tricks and try to get some kind of draw. So I went queen takes bishop, and he blundered. Both of us only had a minute or two left on our timers. The correct move is king to the corner, and even though I do win the h-pawn with a check, it doesn't really amount to anything because he has a rook for a pawn. So after a few token checks, I will run out of checks and he will win. Instead, he played the other move, queen g7, and then I had salvation in queen f5 check, forking king and rook. And here, this is almost certainly a draw, but I thought that maybe I could play on because he had a bit less time than me. And he sacks a pawn, trying to get his own pawns rolling up the board. Comes in with check. And I avoid perpetual by running over to my A and B pawns to give myself cover with them. And then king e2, coming back over, so his own pawns are blocking him from checking me. And then I've kind of triangulated with king e1. There's no more checks. So king g6 is incorrect. He apparently should play, I think, d4 or queen takes c2, leading to a draw. But he wasn't ready to give up. He is rated nearly 2400, and I'm rated 2170 or whatever it is. with a peak rating of over 2200, but he's still meant to be stronger than me. So he goes for broke, goes for the win. I check, and I hoped he was going to play king g4, which looks like the most aggressive move, but it fails. The queen e2, forcing the queens off, and my pawns are in such a position that I will win very easily by pushing a pawn to the end. He played king e6, check, and then I missed my chance to win the game. After a few more checks, and e3, I got scared of his e3 pawn, and I believed that queen g4 check may even end up winning for him, which is incorrect. That is not that big a worry. So I should just play g7, and it's not completely winning. The computer gives it as +1, but it's very, very hard for black to survive this. They have to play literally perfect moves. But instead, I completely messed up, played g7, and because my queen had just been on f6, I'd missed his move that he's now able to play. Queen d4, forking the g7 pawn and my king. So now it truly is a drawn position. There's a few more checks where I'm still hoping I can win with my extra a pawn, but the chances are very, very slim. He knows how to draw this. I get the extra h pawn, but now my queen is so far away that the checks will never stop. Centralizes his queen, and I can't really stop all the checks, and also save the h pawn and the c pawn. So queen g5, and then the checks start coming again. Now I do have no way out without losing the c pawn, and I really don't want to throw away the game by losing the c pawn and letting his d pawn come up the board. And the computer does say it's completely equal, so my draw offer was correct. So that was the game. Very back and forth action. I won the piece for 2 pawns at the beginning, giving myself the edge. But then he fought back very well, used my weak king to get me into a position where he actually had the advantage. Then I threw the game away, essentially, by giving back the piece for very little. And then he gave it back to me by giving back the piece right at the end. And then I might have been winning with that g-pawn, but I think it still may be a draw with accurate play. So maybe it's a fair result. Both of us missing lots of wins and giving back the opponent lots of wins and drawing chances. So the next game will be played on the 27th. I'm hoping to upload my match analysis on the evening of the 27th of December or the morning of the 28th. I don't yet know who I'll be playing, but there's a very good chance I'll be playing a Grandmaster. So thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed the video, see you next time, bye.